but also vibrant. And they're like, I understand you, Matt. And I'm like, good. So there are certain words that pull from different little mortuary boxes in the mind. You know what I mean?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Which
you could imagine a little mini me like humping a hand grenade down.
Yeah, no, and actually, so I appreciate the visual, honestly, especially on a Friday. It makes me, it gets my brain thinking about all the things Matt Booth and all the situations I could possibly cast you in my imagination, which is great.
Get your motorboating.
I like it. I like it. So you actually said, well, I'll rewind real quick. So this is just as a funny segue into a story that happened, I don't know, probably maybe 6 months ago or more. Chris and I, my brother, who's co-host of the podcast with me, we got a text from John Huber. We're good friends with him. And he said, hey, he's like, this is Matt Booth's number. Call him right now and record a podcast. And I was like, what? and I was like, and we were not even around our equipment. We weren't anywhere around. And I was like, what are you talking about? He's like, just call him and hit record. I was like, I don't know what you're asking me to do right now and why you're asking me to do it. And that's how I got your number. That's why it was already in my phone. And it was weird because it just, like, the whole thing and the connectedness, and it just never happened. And I was like, I don't even remember where we were. And I was like, John, this is literally impossible. Like, I don't even have the equipment to do it right now. He's like, just make it happen. I was like,
oh, you know what it was?
It was really strange.
We were in Nashville.
Were we?
We were in Nashville, and we were at his warehouse.
No, it wasn't there.
You sure?
Yeah, positive. Yeah. Anyway. So
I think I remember something about this a while back, and I don't remember why. I think it was like he had posted something possibly about being on a show, and I had said, yo, give me the number, I'm going to call in and like harass you, which I didn't understand. It was like a pre-recorded thing.
Yeah.
And I think that was that was, because I was like, I'm going to fuck with him right now. I was all fired up. But then, alas,
Yeah, and I would say, like, fast forward however long that was to now, we appreciate you being on. This is incredible.
Yeah, thank you.
Like, you have no idea, like, this, hopefully, as an outcome, is going to make what would already otherwise be not a fun Friday. So I'm stoked.
Fuck.
Yeah, no, it's just
I'm about to turn that frown upside down.
I know, and I knew you would have a heightened level of commitment to do that, which is why I appreciate the fact that you're with us, which is fantastic.
I am vested. I was vested in bringing levity to you, even if you didn't require. And now that I know, I will even further invest myself.
Oh my gosh, this could be the best podcast ever recorded.
Well, let's not start sucking mistakes quite yet. However, I will say that, I tremendously appreciate you guys affording me the spotlight on your show, because I have been, all, hand grenade humping aside, I've been very vested in, reestablishing my cigar business and touching the appropriate consumers through the correct channels. And the landscape has changed, I was making a comment to a friend of mine the other day, and I said, you realize that when I started, the people that I'm now most interested or need to connect with the most were 11 and 12 years old.
Yeah.
And so it's a different mindset, different time. Business can be piloted in a completely different fashion. And, my mantra is, how does Matt Booth monetize the, mind-melting, anus-splitting, soul-sucking last 12 years of his life in the cigar business, monetize that and make a living and stay home.
Yeah.
Right.
And, you guys are a vehicle for that. So I'm on board. I'm not only vested in brightening your day, but however I can bring value to your show, because ultimately it, in a very maniacally self-serving fashion also helps me.
Yeah,
that's the point, though.
Yeah, and that's what I always look at, that as the point. Should be mutually beneficial. Yeah. And I will say,
absolutely.
So you're friends with Erica and Amy, who are part of the TLE podcast, which I'm really good friends with, and that's actually kind of part of what is weird, because they have always said over and over, you need to have Matt on your show, and it's not for not wanting to have you on the show. It just shit and situation, the whole thing, you know how it goes. And they love you to a degree that is really admirable, and it's super nice to see. So I thought it was pretty incredible. They've spoken so highly of you to me directly so many times, and I'm like, well, that's incredible. I need to talk to this guy, because not everybody in the cigar industry is that well received, or there's a warm reception around all the time.
Well, the feeling is mutual for them, 100-fold, and well, at least it's good to hear they're talking nice, you know.
Yeah, for now.
They're talking nice about.
Until you piss them off.
I mean, you never know. Tomorrow could be curtains.
It's a different day.
Well, with us, you kind of get the sarcastic, like brotherly, like bullshit.
Yeah, for sure.
That's kind of how we talk. Yeah. But it's always in good spirit.
Yeah, of course it is. So it was funny because I know that you, obviously the jewelry part of your business, and I guess, do we call it lifestyle? Is that what you would associate, like all the business things that you do?
Yeah, I mean, I guess, man. I mean, lifestyle, disruption, especially brand ambassadors specifically. Like, I vomit a little in my mouth, honestly, every time, but I don't really know if there's a singular word that better describes, every brand is always touting, we're not a brand, we're a lifestyle. Well, allow me to masturbate in mayonnaise for a second here. I've never heard that before, but I think that our brand is genuinely unlike any other in the world. And I don't say that as a weird flex. I say that as honestly as I can, because, part of the mind melting over the last several years has been managing a business that's multifaceted, multi-classed in a way that, I mean, you're not supposed to be able to do this. I mean, they stack the deck against you out of the gate, via regulation, via law, via however you want to call it. Sure. And, I mean, just for example, in the spirits business, it is a feat to have your product on a shelf in a store.
Right.
Like, it's not like that alone is a feat, especially as a small business, let alone to be building a distribution. Like, you can go anywhere in the bottle you shit, and you can take a picture of it. A lot of people do that. And then they say, I have a tequila, I have a mescaline and infused CBD, tonic, whatever. Are you recording this?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Are you recording this right now?
Yeah. Hey, we're
sneaky.
Hey, we're sneaky, man. Yeah, of course we're recording. Are you kidding me? This is gold.
If we said we're hitting the record button, that's when people's walls kind of go up.
Yeah.
So we sneaky you.
Yeah.
Oh, no. I have no walls. I just, and maybe I shouldn't have said the mayonnaise comment. But anyway,
no, the mayonnaise comment is gold.
We're too deep at this point. You understand what I'm saying? So,
yeah.
And I guess I should apologize first to my mother, who will never hear this, and secondly to, Erican and Blossom of TLE fame for not exactly behaving myself. But there's something about the pheromones and the chemicals that are coming through the line fiber optically from you two that are almost like activating me.
Yeah.
So it's like, it's not exactly my fault. You want this, and I can tell you want this.
Yeah, we do.
So I'm going to give it to you.
It is exactly what we want, and I've had numerous amounts of women and men both tell me that. So keep it going.
Your game is savage. Straight. So, what were we saying? Oh, yeah. So, the deck is stacked against you, especially trying to pilot a business the way that we are. And, well, I guess there's a period at the end of that statement. So anyways, we're giving it our best over here.
Yeah. So you mentioned the spirits part of it, and you have a gin, correct? Is that what you have that you've put out into the marketplace?
That is correct.
Is it only only gin at this point?
Only gin. And my goal really, other than maybe smaller ancillary specialty type items, I would really like to further evolve our footprint in the craft spirit zone as a gin. I want to be known as a gin brand. I want to develop further formulas and variants of our gin, specifically.
So I'm only assuming, based upon the fact that you have gin and gin only, that is probably your preference in terms of a spirit.
Well, we're going to be honest here?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Okay, truth time. So when I long since had decided that a craft spirit was a viable component of what I saw as a complete lineup for our brand. I had decided that gin was the move, and I felt that gin was the move for a myriad of reasons. One specifically because, now if you want to time travel with me for a moment, gentlemen, a few years back, I said gin will be the next spirit that receives a boutiqueification. I said this will be, bourbon all these spirits have kind of been in line to be the next spirit to have that spotlight. And I felt that gin was going to kind of have a renaissance of sorts. And I felt that it was going to dovetail directly into, this resurgence of craft culture, cocktail culture, even, younger cats are shopping more higher end items. They're buying less of more in terms of quality,
right?
And they're buying heritage pieces, leather bags that they would have repaired rather than replaced, which is, this is a throwback to 50s 60s mentality, right? So and I think that the crafted cocktail is surely a part of that. Really just because the bartenders that make them typically have a phenomenal mustache and sometimes wear a little armband, which I think really ties that whole picture together for me.
Sure.
Yeah. I said, if the guy behind the counter looks like that, then gin is the play, 100%. Now, or gal, guy or gal.
Sure, you got to be inclusive,
Oof.
Of course. Yeah, you almost a little bit of a 2020 faux pas. Hey, Matt, the good news is you have Corona on your side right now, so pressure's off, my friend.
I know a lot of things going on. So the problem, the challenge, we're going to be very honest here, was at the time I hated gin. Okay. I thought it was foul. I detested. Now, but hear me out. Because I had nothing but poor experiences with it. Wow. And I don't mean like over service, which I find that term cute, or overindulgence, but sipping upon lackluster to subpar products.
Yeah, sure.
And having that be my scope of understanding of the spirit. So when I decided that this was going to be what we were going to do, I immediately delved into gin and fell madly in love with gin. Not only as my spirit of choice, but it's boundless in terms of its versatility. You can create your own botanical mixture, which tremendously influences completely almost the outcome, the final outcome of the taste and the personality, the profile of the gin. Right. So I think stereotypically, gin is understood to be more along the lines of what would be considered London dry style. Very, very juniper forward. As the gentleman that first worked with me to create our first formula, because these are not my words, and I'm proud of all my isms, but if something's not mine, I never take credit. He said, it's as if you're being face fucked by pine cones.
Hey.
Yeah. I was literally going to say, okay, so it's funny you said that, because I was going to say pine, but you said pine cones already. You beat me to it.
Yeah.
So this visual, although also very funny, because you could imagine like this really like rapey pine cone monster, like
100% went right into my brain when you said that.
Yeah, but that's what it's doing to your mouth hole. And unless you really are partial to that personality, that characteristic, it's going to be an immediate turnoff. And I find this to have a cousin on the other side of the border there in tequila, because many people have had a similar experience with tequila because of whatever that part of it is that makes you immediately want to throw up.
Right.
Right. Whatever that is. That thing that when you drink it, you're like,
that's me.
And it wants to.
That is literally me with tequila. And I agree with you in terms of like it just being a subpar tequila.
Dear God, man. Wow. But then if you hit the Don Julio, the 42, then you have a completely different experience. And so anyone that's like, I don't drink tequila, I say, even though it's not my favorite, and even in the upper echelon of product, I still, I would prefer gin 10-1. However, I would say, man, you have to give it a real shot.
Sure.
And so because if you don't, how do you even know what you're missing, or how do you even know what you're talking about? So with gin, my goal was like, okay, let's debit the pine cone monster. Let's introduce a tremendous amount of citrus. Let's make this floral. Let's make this West Coast. Let's make this more universally palatable, but still with signature presence, personality, mouthfeel, definitely quality, to be in line with all of our other branded items. And that's what we sought out to blend, And at the time, I really had no concept, and was very pleasantly surprised as to how invaluable my cigar mouth was in the blending process.
Interesting.
Oh, yeah.
So in terms
I've been
of
tuning
gin,
my palate for over a decade blending cigars.
right?
Yeah.
So in terms of the gin itself, and not that I want to spend every moment of this podcast on gin, but I keep relating.
This has been a lot of gin talk.
Yeah, it has. And the reason I am curious and it's piqued my interest is because my wife is a huge gin fan. So she's always looking for something, I would say, like uniquely different in terms of gin. And so I'm like, I guess my thing is, in terms of distribution, where could we go and buy your gin? Where would you say? I'm in Dayton, Ohio, so probably a far ways away from you. Where can I go get your gin?
We're currently available in 5 states.
Okay.
2 by special order.
Okay.
And 6 states. Excuse me. And in Hawaii, Southern California,
nice.
Nevada, and Arizona, we are available in Whole Foods. Okay?
Oh, nice.
The locations that carry spirits, specifically.
Yeah.
Okay.
In Hawaii, through my brother Jason Fuketa at Fujioka's. We are available through, the Times supermarket chain.
Okay.
As well as, our dude Marvin at, you guys are cigar guys, the name. I'm blanking on the name. The market, the damn.
Yeah.
Why am I thinking of J. Crew?
I don't know, but they make ungodly suits. So
it's our Fields. Oh my God. Our Fields. It's a specialty market within some of the local markets there. Shout out to Marvin.
Okay.
And and many other on and off premise. It's poured at the bar and a featured item at the Nobu there in Honolulu.
Nice.
Oh, okay. That's what I was going to ask you.
My Nobu family.
That's what I was going to ask you. In terms of Hawaii, you're speaking that it could be available in every island, but also at bars. Because the reason I asked this is because I'll be in Hawaii in September, so I want to make sure that if it's available, I can find it.
Oh, you go pick you up some. Poured at one of the bars in the Grand Wailea Resort in Maui.
Okay. Yep.
Not the main bar, but there's a smaller bar there that has a little bit more of a craft focus.
Okay.
The main bar is mostly like, hey, I want Tito's, I want, like the mainstream stuff.
Sure.
But there's a smaller bar on property where they do craft cocktails, and that's where that's served. And many, many other fine establishments in the islands.
Good. That's good to know, because then it'll help me kind of narrow down where I need to go when I go back. I've been to Hawaii, just in Maui 2 years ago, and it'll be back in Oahu and Big Island this year. So
you know what? I am so I'm also a gin drinker, and one of the things
You sounded thirsty.
Yeah.
We're ironically drinking bourbon right now. So
like, I've always been a Hendrix fan or a Bombay, which is pretty readily available. But I've always found that like a gin and tonic usually goes good with a nice bright, earthy type of cigar. Like if you are smoking a cigar with gin, which I hope you are at this point, what type of gin drink do you usually drink with your cigars?
So our gin, because of the very citrus-forward nature of its personality, pairs very well with the smoking experience neat, because the burn from, twofold. The higher proof, because Daddy made sure there was octane in his,
of course
in
he
his
did.
formula,
Yeah.
as well. Well, look, man. I mean, let's be realistic. All right, we're not drinking it to there's a purpose why you ingest alcohol.
100%, for sure.
And secondly, the citrus and the burn from the citric acid provides a really, really solid burn on the palate. And I genuinely believe that this is the signature that the brown spirit drinker is looking for when they reach for the brown spirit. Now, there are other elements to the brown spirit that are not present or so present in our gin, but that fire is definitely there. So
nice.
At a lot of the events at the cigar bars where we've been able to pair both, the consumers drink it neat with the cigars. Now, a gin-based Negroni works phenomenally with our gin also, which browns it up a little bit, which gets it a little bit closer to, those that only participate in the brown juice.
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
So it pairs very delightfully with smoking. It had to, because I knew one of the other reasons I developed a gin is because I genuinely felt that no one from the cigar business would follow me into gin, at least initially, until they saw that I was having success with it. And then, of course, they would swarm it like velociraptors. But my point is that it's the anti, right?
Right. Yeah, it definitely is. Yeah. I thought it was peculiar.
It was
peculiar. Well, which I guess in my sense it was like, especially with like the branding overall and the cigar aspect of it, I thought it was odd that I saw that there was the piece of what you were doing that was gin related and wasn't a dark liquor or brown liquor, which is what I'm usually accustomed to.
Rums and bourbons.
Honestly, it's why we've spent so much time talking about it, because I'm actually very intimately intrigued by it.
Yeah.
So
I did it because I knew it was going to cause pause for thought, and because of my advocacy for gin in general, and feeling so compelled to make it a part of our collection, I knew that my tobacconauts would at least give it a shot. And then when they did, they would see via, being endeared to it by my brand, and, possibly me shoving it into their face hole in the vent, that they would understand how wonderful a pairing it was with our cigars.
Yeah. I want to try it with another cigar. I want your brand with another cigar. Like, now, does any of your existing lineup of cigars match really, really well with your existing brand of gin?
Only my cigars.
Okay.
Only your
cigars. There are no cigars.
Of course.
All right.
No other cigars.
I see what you're saying.
It would be dumb to suggest that all the other, let's call them, million variation of cigars that exist will never pair well with your gin.
Yeah, they only go good with this gin.
Yeah, it's got to have a flower on it. Flower. If you don't have it, it's like square peg round hole.
Yeah,
it's a non-match.
Yeah, it's just not. It's
just honestly,
it won't make sense. So, what is the proof on the gin?
90.
That's pretty high for.
That's pretty up there.
Yeah,
that's definitely got some ass to it. That's great.
Yes, and I'm working on ones that have higher proof. What's interesting about the gin is you could have the exact same formula, and you add more proof, and you would think you were drinking a different product.
Oh yeah.
Like it
changes the personality. Just the amount of alcohol changes the entire personality.
That's interesting. Do you often find that that is
kind of like when you add more alcohol to a human being? It also changes the personality.
You turn into a real asshole.
Amen to that. So let's segue into the cigar piece of it, because obviously that's probably the biggest derived interest that we have, right? You had gotten out of the cigar game there for a brief period of time. Can you just explain? And I know a lot
about that.
A lot of people know about it, but in terms of like the re-entrance into cigars, what was that story? What was that all about, and why kind of the resurgence into the marketplace again? What was your goal? What was your intention?
Well, here's the situation. I was trying to manage the most politely a divorce from a longstanding distribution partner, and I wanted to handle it with as much care and respect as possible, as an offense of respect in terms of what we had been through as partners. So I elected to represent my pause in the business as a retirement.
Okay.
And in all fairness, I needed to kind of get my head straight. because, the real deal here, gentlemen, is that, I've heard many people say, oh, you do what you love, to make a living. You must never work a day in your life. And the harsh reality is, if you do what you love to make a living, you should very much hope to be fortunate enough to continue to love what you do.
Sure. Yes.
Because many times business can muddy the water tremendously.
Yep.
This is why I discontinued the pursuit of a career in music professionally.
Okay.
Because I can play.
Yeah. What instrument do you play?
Well, professionally, I was moving towards a career as a bassist.
Okay.
But I play alto saxophone. I play guitar. But if you really want to get down, I play the bass. So
hot damn.
I noodle in the other. I started on the alto when I was in elementary school.
Okay. Nice reed instrument. I dig it.
Yeah, man. But the saxophone the saxophone mind, as I learned later, is directly connected to the bass mind. It's this one and the same. That's why there are several guys that are professional, like Marcus Miller, for example. He's a sax and bass player. So because it just works. Now, going through the first 8 to 9 years in the business was like several lifetimes. And there was a sunset occurring for that those eras, right, of my career in the business. And I needed to regroup. And I think more than anything, I desperately, desperately needed to fall back in love with cigar making.
Right.
And I needed to afford myself the time to do so, to explore, to allow my mind to wander, to go into friends' factories and sit down and fuck around and blend with them and create solely for the fun of creating and the fulfillment and the reward that comes from when you produce something great with someone that you respect, or even better yet, a friend that you respect, in a factory. There's nothing like it, And so that's what I needed to get back to. I needed to get back to roots. And so I did. And Room 101 as a cigar brand was the first product that you saw from us, was collaborative in nature with my dear friend Robert Caldwell. It's called the Hit and Run. And we released that at the very next trade show. And then the following spring, I began to release solo efforts from Room 101. Farce saw the light of day spring of the following year. And then we've continued to evolve our SKU offering, and we have our sights set on the revitalization of some of our more well-known legacy brands, legacy sub-brands, things like that. Just keep the creative butter churning,
right,
so to speak. It's really great that this pandemic has basically paused everything. I feel really happy about that. I empathize for anyone else that it is impacted in that way, in that fashion.
Yeah.
There's
something about the epidemic, even for me, where I felt like I've been more productive on a lot of different fronts. Maybe not on others, but for sure for most of it, I've been more productive. Does that?
Oh, my man, if you don't come out of this better in some way, you missed probably the greatest opportunity that's been afforded to us as a society in over 100 years.
Yeah, it's an insane thing to have kind of a forcible reflection.
Yeah,
which is kind of it's a strange thing.
Yeah, but look, man, I mean, far beyond, in my case, far beyond necessary. I mean, I've been extremely productive during this time. Continuing to like, for example, participate in things like this, perfect example, right? Or, try to create new programs that will continue to drive business even when, stores are closed, and, on and on and on, designing new collections, et cetera, et cetera. But at the same time, frustrating, because you're like, okay, so my brand is in a very delicate position in tobacco, whereas we need to continue to allow it the space and time to flourish, and you can't just dump products into the marketplace. They have to be responsibly ushered in a cadence that one builds off the next, and so on and so forth.
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, when you have like, I mean, essentially by the time this thing clicks over, you're going to have 6 months of time that you've lost. You've have half a year that you've lost.
Right.
You know.
So in terms of the cigar
yes.
community itself, as it relates to your brand, what do you feel, especially given the pandemic, what do you feel that your organization can do, or what things have you done to kind of ensure that there's going to be some sort of long-term sustainability and success with the brand overall, given the fact that we've got, you know, most states are in they're in a state of shutdown right now, right? I mean, we're living in Ohio. You can't go to a cigar lounge. It's against the rules for the time being, and will be for probably the next month or so.
It's a little hard to smoke, right, with a mask on.
Yeah, it was that was the weird, ironic thing in Ohio. It was like, we're going to open up businesses, and one of our favorite B&Ms local to us that we are, you know, huge fans of, said it's great that the state and the governor allowed us to open up. However, he's making sure that everybody's responsible and mandating wearing masks. He goes, two things that don't go hand in hand are smoking with a mask on. So we're going to remain closed for a period of time. So, you know, in terms of what you do in your brand, what is that execution into that next level when this thing opens back up? What does that look like?
Well, let's be real honest here. We were teetering on the threshold of, you know, chapter 4 through 75 of the virtual age in our business, and have been kind of like a, you know, like a 5-year-old sitting at the edge of the pool, nervous about jumping in, you know, and then finally his dad comes up behind him and says, guess what?
You're going in.
You're going to swim. So guess what? Boop. Now it's 2030 for the cigar business. And, you know, this has been a long time coming. You know, and what do you do? Like I've said before, what do you do in the handshake business when you're forbidden to shake hands? Right. So, as a group, my business partners, in the La Polina camp, Sammy and Clay, and I set forth to develop our own digital platform that we control. And we conducted our first live event via that platform about a week ago, and we leveraged it to channel business through brick and mortar retail.
Very cool.
And the interesting thing about this was, you know, and my attitude throughout the entire process was, come one, come all, let's just do some good and see if we can actually make a difference. You know, make everybody a little bit of scratch here, have a feel good evolution, have a great show, be entertaining, you know, and offer the same type of touch and feel potentially that you would have in an in-store activation type environment, right? And we transacted some product. Well, actually, we didn't. Our retailers did, right?
Yeah.
And then what we did is we drop shipped the product directly to their consumers as a courtesy to them. So it was actually kind of an interesting exercise because the retailers had no upfront investment in any product whatsoever. All they had to do was conduct the transaction and, of course, remain responsible to their local applicable, taxes and whatnot.
Sure.
And the products landed at the doorstep of every one of their consumers that then, because they participated, were also eligible, or because they purchased the packs, they were also eligible to for all the raffles, which the raffles were open, but they had an added benefit of additional tickets and whatnot. And it was a really cool affair. And stepping back, although when you look behind the curtain, you say, okay, off the starting blocks, great, but we need to fix this. We should run this differently. We need to tweak. We need, I think a very, very formidable first step. And, we ended up selling something like 15,000 cigars.
That is awesome. Congratulations.
And
that's great.
And that is far more than we would sell at a store for the day. So, of course, my mind is whirling with all the potential and opportunity that surround.
Well, what does this mean long term?
Format.
Right.
Well, let me ask you this. Like, this is a very poignant question. I think in the circumstances that we're in as individuals and B&Ms, and this need to stay at home, knowing this, and I feel like this is probably company specific, so I'm not saying this is a one size fits all type of thing, but for at least Room 101, do you plan to put more emphasis on online sales or more B&Ms?
Well, online sales through my brick and mortar retailers.
Right. I would say one curtailing into the other, correct?
Yeah. So basically my goal is to invest myself however I can to empower or to channel sales to my brick and mortars online stores. I'm going to continue to forever remain responsible to the pull through of my product and to the pulse of my brand in our community, right? But as the landscape changes, it's also my responsibility to make sure that I'm as best on top of or have as good of an understanding as I can of, okay, what are the most viable means or channels that I need to be driving to continue to pilot this business effectively, right? And, I have forever been the 1950s vacuum salesman. I have been door to door, handshake to handshake. For real, I have been. And you know what, man? I built this brand 2 times over
doing just that
with that mechanic. Yeah. And I've always felt very strongly that, I want to see as many people as I can. I want to personally relay my message, connect, answer any questions they have. I want to show my retail partners respect by visiting their stores and seeing their customers. And, but the road has been a perpetual path of continuously diminishing returns.
Sure.
As the business gets more hostile, as things change, as the landscape changes, like I said, as I now am addressing the fact that I really need to invest myself more into the digital promotion of our brand, it's actually going to do everyone better if I do so.
Right. Do you think part of that too is the just consumer knowledge in general? I mean, you talk about diminishing returns potentially, through some of the actions that I think have historically been a part of what, I guess the execution of how you actually market your brand to B&Ms or into the consumer marketplace. I agree with you in terms of it seems like that landscape has changed pretty drastically. And I think also this pandemic is causing an acceleration in that as well, which is it's kind of crazy. It's like what was probably going to be 5 years from now is happening right now.
Yeah, this was this pulled the pin on the grenade. I mean, this like you said, I mean, you couldn't have said it better. It completely accelerated the process. And now we're there. So however prepared you were, however unprepared you were, let's be very honest with ourselves here and address it, because you're already there right now.
Right.
So let's get online, let's get the stores up, let's start beating that drum and start transacting with folks.
So what changes,
if you're not already,
what changes for you and your brand going forward in terms of some of those? I would say they've inherently been a part of the cigar industry for a long time in terms of the event stuff and all of that. How does that change for you ongoing?
I will still conduct events, of course. But I think this will be, and this is part of something that I've been looking at for some time, but just as this has been kind of an accelerant, as you said, for a great deal of things for myself personally. I will kill myself 100 times over to go out there and get it and to do the right thing, to do right by my supporters. But and I don't only speak for myself. Of course, I'm not going to put words in people's mouths, but a great deal of my brothers in arms on the brand owner side of things are, my story is not unique in this regard. It's just like, man, I've been fucking killing myself. And I more than most am on the road,
right?
Because I'm very, very in tune with the idea that every territory in the country behaves differently. And so I have to not only travel to promote and sell and endear our brand to people, but I also need to be aware of what's going on territory to territory.
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
How are these territories functioning? How are they reacting to certain products? What is, what's their viability? Like what's the heartbeat looking like over there?
Yeah.
As it applies to my brand in market and also just in general, what does the landscape look like? But as a byproduct of that, physically, it was doing me no favors, probably psychologically and spiritually as well, to be honest with you. And, I need to focus better on doing more business with less people. I need to beat the drum even louder for my champions, for my Clydesdales, for my guys that, devoutly support our brand and have for years. And I, in return, know that I can reciprocate that, and return that investment confidently, knowing that it's not a one-way street, and continue to produce more and more business with fewer people.
Yeah.
Seems like
I feel that.
It's weird. It's weird that
it's the 80-20 rule.
Yeah, thinking about these times where it's like executing on that strategy seems for sure the best means to, I would say, ensure the long-term, sustainability of a business. It's very strange how the climate has changed so much in all aspects of business, but in particular, what we're talking about is like in the cigar community and what that represents for years to come. It's, I would want to say that I feel that I would ever disagree with you, but I don't.
Yeah,
I
definitely
100% agree with what you're saying, which is
sure.
The times are definitely changing. The tide has changed, and I think I think too that you're going to start seeing a different reaction from. I mean, we're talking about brand specific. We're talking about Room 101, but then you have the consumer aspect of it. Of course, you have the B&M. You have the online aspect of it. I think you're going to see dynamic changes across the board as well, as far as how people market. What they do in this marketplace.
Agreed. The future is now, in case anyone listening didn't get the memo. We're here. Like that whole thing everyone's been talking about, it's now. Like it's right now. So adapt accordingly.
Yeah, of course. By the way, total weird segue. You probably make some of the coolest gold rings I've ever seen in my life. By the way, I am a huge gold fan. Like I don't know why. Just as of recent, I've fallen in love with like anything aesthetically that is gold. Like just
with yellow gold, right?
Way too into it. Yes, way too into it.
Can I explain why?
Please.
Can I help you understand?
Yes, please do. I need the mental clarity.
Okay, so. Long ago, but not so long ago, there were natives, for example, in the Pacific Northwest, and they couldn't understand for the life of them, why are these dirty white men here digging in the ground for these yellow rocks? And they're crazy. Like they're literally killing each other over these rocks.
Right.
I don't understand what's going on. You've gotten infected by it. Like pirate treasure. Could you imagine pirate opening his chest and the type of throttling undulation that would rifle through his body when he stares at all that glowing gold?
Yeah, that's a good point. You also, I feel like that's very closely related to the entire Pirates of the Caribbean series, which is incredible. But I agree with you. And this is the weird thing. I think I read like a fact. I don't know. Someone should probably double check what I'm saying. I can't remember how much they were saying that just in the ocean floor, how many billions of dollars of what would be considered, gold consumable literally exists on the ocean floor. And I literally I got to die for fucking treasure.
We got to get a submarine here.
Yes.
Clearly.
I was thinking the same thing. But yeah, it was weird because I was like, obviously looking things up and just doing some, basic research, and was looking. I was like, man, those gold rings are fucking incredible.
Thank you, man.
Small short story.
And I really.
never mind.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, there was the whole submarine thing, like the whole like go searching for gold thing. I know a guy that did that. They spent over $2 million like getting ships and submersibles.
Got a couple shrimp.
They found $15 million worth of gold. The guy that actually funded it was like, okay, you found it. That's great. The people that were actually running the expedition, they did like two of the guys took all the gold and disappeared. And like, like, where the fuck is our money?
That would have been me. I'd have been out.
Well, I mean, touche. I mean, you got to cover your six, man.
Yeah, that's a move.
Like, you've got the guys with the expedition, and then you have the guy in the wetsuit with the HK subgun that's like sitting behind them. That's your boy.
Yep.
You know, otherwise you might not get your gold. Yeah. And even then, got to stay on your toes.
Yep.
So look, I really appreciate you noticing that, because that's some of our more standout, especially our custom, our one-of-a-kind pieces, our bespoke made. That is really reflective of what Room 101 was always meant to be, and still is in my heart space, right?
Right.
So it was a custom house. And, it is, I think, the most present in the products that we make for individuals by commission. And then the funsy, like, one or two like type fuck around pieces that we make that are extravagant and, opulent as fuck, and just for the sake of doing it, that's all. So thanks for noticing.
Oh, absolutely, man. It's just seriously
opulent
incredible.
As fuck.
I like that. Opulent as fuck. It should be a tagline at a minimum, but a sticker at a maximum for sure. I'd love to slap that on a bumper.
You think the max is sticker?
Well,
like no. Don't get a neon.
Listen, there's a lot of sayings in the world, Matt. we've got to be selective here.
What color's your wedding band though?
It's wood with and it's got a gold ring with interlaced in the wood.
Right.
It's very cool. It's very nice. Although it's tarnished a little bit, and I got to send it back, which is really maddening. But anyway, so Matt, I get a question for you in terms of
Ask it.
You've done a lot over a long period of time. What are some of the resources you've had available to you, either personal or other, that have helped you along your journey?
You have, on this interview, you are listening to the voice of one of, if not the most stubborn fucking person you have ever come across in the history of your life. And that core principle of, to call it perseverance would be an insult, right? I have basically described it as, I have rammed my face into a brick wall until the brick gave away under my flesh and bone.
Matt, that's stubborn tenacity.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's all, I've been, my business partner, Sammy, has referred to me as a tenacious entrepreneur. It's interesting. I have learned every step of the way, right? So, to start in the Marine Corps Infantry,
right.
That is an environment of, there's nothing, there's no try, like you're just going to do it. Like, it's just not even accepted, the idea of, that you have an option to not do whatever, and complete successfully whatever the task at hand is. Right. And, I graduated into an atmosphere that was Hollywood in, 2000, taking on multiple jobs, some of which brought me into contact with industry elite and CEOs of major companies, and observing at the time, unbeknownst to me, what was their work ethic and their daily, day in, day out process as to who they were. And who they were was why they were in those positions, right? And it was really bizarre to me, coming from the Marine Corps Infantry, where it was like do or die, there is no try, but also don't raise your hand for anything, and for the love of God, just get by with doing the minimum, like you're not going to make yourself famous here. Just like you're still going to get the same check, just like coast whenever you can kind of thing. Yeah. Right. Because your number will always come up.
Right.
So you might as well just chill while you can. Like that's the complete inversion of these people's mentality, And so I was like, man, why on earth would you put yourself through that? But then, in the coming years, when I was inspired to start my own brand, I adopted, I was a different person because, okay, now it's on my shoulders.
Right.
And so, then, I realized like, oh, you know what? I won't kill myself for someone else, but I'll kill myself for myself.
Right.
But I mean, that's the entrepreneurial way. It's to live several years of your life like most people won't, to live the rest of your life like most people can't. Does that make sense?
It makes sense.
Lived it.
That's a mic drop, by the way, on that one.
I like that.
I got that off a meme. I won't
that
lie.
was real good. I was like,
maybe
damn.
I wrote the meme.
I lived it.
There's a reason why I applied just a simple amount of silence to that, because that was incredible.
Yeah.
I feel like no words could have been introduced into that silent space.
And it's so hard to put it in words too when you try to explain it to someone who's never really lived it either. It's so hard to get them to understand that perspective. Like I've told a similar story so many times. I went down with my ship in a play on words, and it's so hard. And I did it for 10 years in a very lucrative but emerging market, and I went down with the ship, and
understood.
That's the only way to do it. I didn't want to bail.
Well, the captain does go down with the ship. This is tradition. However, one of the things that has actually saved our branded business was, its multi-class nature. Because, we have incoming. My son is coming in to destroy.
You're good.
My boy. So, when you got to remember when I got into, and I don't even know if I've ever covered this, but this is reality, right? So when I was beginning to become ushered into the cigar business, so to speak, this was 2008. And this was not only a viable extension of our branded business and something that I felt that we could very successfully port our brand philosophy and cult followership over to in terms of the boutique cigar world, the boutique market that was emerging at the time. But you got to remember that the economy had just imploded.
Right.
So every store, I had made a great deal of effort, you understand, to place our products strategically and align myself with specialty retail, a network of specialty retail all around the country, that we had a very impressive, resume of placements at retail, as well as had been, building up a lot of steam in terms of, like I said, our cult prowess and known associates and the like. And then every store either went out of business or didn't pay their bills.
Right.
Like overnight. But tobacco at the time was blossoming because there was this boutique wave that was just beginning to, materialize.
Right.
And the business was thriving, and in that segment going to thrive even more in the few years to follow until it became completely super saturated, of course. But I mean, that's something we can get into. But becoming active in tobacco saved my brand because it allowed for us to flourish and thrive in another space whilst licking our wounds, right, in a space that was very damaged, and allowing the pulse and blood flow to slowly come back to that segment, which it did, was never the same and came back to life in kind of a different way, because that's kind of how that works, right? Now knowing that through personal experience. But, I would highly suggest, you got to have your hands in more than one cookie jar.
Yes.
Yeah, and honestly, back even to then, the irony and the timing, right? So like you had mentioned, the tobacco piece of it being something that was starting to blossom, but the economical conditions were flattened and non-existent, right? I remember buying a condo in April of 2008, which was probably the worst decision, not knowing that I could have ever made in my entire life. Chris and I both bought one.
Yeah.
And I was like, wow, that couldn't have been any more terrible timing.
It was really bad timing.
And just seeing the impact on the economy back then, but also weirdly enough, like you said, there was this blossoming thing around the idea of boutique cigars, not dissimilar to what beer did in a very similar time frame.
Yeah, very similar time
Correct.
frame.
Absolutely correct. And to what gin is doing and has been doing right now.
Amen.
Now I want gin.
So
I know we're drinking bourbon, and now I just want fucking gin.
gin.
God damn
so it's every my dear juicy man friend, one of my best friends in the business, Abe Dabahaba out of Smoke Inn. He told me a long time ago. He said, "Booth, every dog has his day, and today ain't your day, but you will have your day. I promise you that." And you could apply that logic to anything, really. And the idea is, if you do not give up, it's not a question of if, it's only a question of when.
Right.
Yeah.
But how long do you have to ram your mouth into that drinking fountain, before things turn around for you,
Dude, that's where persistence and tenacity kicks in. If you've got it, that's where you use them.
Absolutely. Well, there is no other way. I mean, look, man, and I don't fault anyone for, being born with a leg up. It's really what you do with it that's more impressive than being born with it. But, if you were born into if I was, Evan Yerman as an example, I would have had a phenomenal leg up in that business, or, I would have, not to totally like call somebody out by name, but I mean, you get the idea. It's like, I didn't have a relative. I didn't have any legacy. I never, every category, every industry that I've ever piloted part of our brand into, I basically, had to kick the door in myself and begin to make something out of nothing, and there's something to be said for that, I think.
Yes.
Matt, you mentioned something as far as the saturation.
Shameless brag.
Yeah,
I don't know what that had to do with
it. Which I like.
I love
this is the platform to do it.
Yeah.
You'd mentioned just a few moments ago about potential market saturation or market saturation. We don't even have to say potential, but if somewhere at this particular point in time, here we are in this weird pandemic, life is going to change as we know it going forward. We're in 2020, which is weird to even suggest or say at this point.
It's so weird.
It's very strange. If someone were to look to open up their own cigar brand, what advice would you give them? And that advice could definitely be, don't do it. And I hear the laughter is just don't even think about it.
From a competitive standpoint, for sure.
I'm sorry, man. I just dude, it's not.
So the reason I asked the question is because we actually get that question all the time. Where like there's a lot of people, and it's a strange scenario. You're different because you have not only a legacy brand, like you even mentioned earlier, as far as like this cult following. But by the way, in terms of the Room 101 Army, I know you're not going to tell me who is running that. Because if you know I'm not going to tell you. They have a very similar personality, so I can only begin to think it's someone that you're intimately familiar with or someone you're related to. It's strikingly similar, which kind of freaks me out a little.
Or one might suggest that it's someone that's smart enough to be able to mimic what they hear and see.
Oh, that creeps me out even more. I'm not gonna lie.
It sounds more just
we
like
don't
you.
fuck around with dum-dums in this camp, gentlemen.
No,
I don't know what type of idea you have about us.
Honestly, I can tell at this point. So the question being what it is, and the advice can be whatever you want it to be, and it could essentially be don't do it, dumb. But we get asked that. It's not only we get asked the question all the time, but there's always brands that are grabbing for attention. This is the things that I'm doing. Here's what I'm concentrating on. And Chris and I are interacting with those brands on a continuum. Yeah. These folks who want to create their place in the market.
I can't take this anymore. Is everyone listening to me right now?
Yeah.
Yes. I can't. I'm sorry. I can't. I cannot.
You got the podium. You got the podium.
Is everyone can you knock on something?
Yeah.
Just not pop, 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 pop. Is every single is your mind's eye open and ready to receive information?
Yes.
I'm ready to drink the Kool-Aid.
Jim Jones style.
Do it.
Yeah.
Do not do it. Oh. You are out of your mind. We're going to do this, bro, and all that.
Right.
It doesn't apply to you, sweetheart. It doesn't work here anymore. Don't fucking do it. Go be a fireman, okay? Go be a firefighter. Buy a couple nice duplexes. Save your money. Retire early. Lift weights. Get in one of those calendars. Mad bitches. Whatever you got to do. Just don't do it.
Right.
Please. Dear God, man.
It's interestingly enough that is the answer I expected because it's not the first time we've heard that answer.
Do you remember?
It's honest, man.
Right.
Do you remember when I used the phrase stubborn tenacity?
Yes.
Well, that moment, it's already kicking in.
Here we go. Well, then, good luck. And as a businessman says to go fuck yourself, I would say, I wish you well.
Right.
Yeah, thank you.
So here's the deal, man. Let me tell you a story without naming any names because I don't kiss and tell, but I think it's very relevant.
Of course.
And I rarely repeat anything that comes out of private conversation, but this is obscenely relevant to what you're saying because it shook me.
Perfect.
When this individual told me this. Now, I have been blessed and had the benefit and the honor to call many people that I look up to in this business my friends. Okay. And I have earned their friendship and I have earned their ear hole when it came time to lean on someone for some unbiased advice and mentorship of sorts. And so several people that are far, I love you, my son.
Oh, that's adorable.
Super cool.
That is awesome.
He just said, I love you.
I heard him. We could hear it clear as crystal. That's awesome.
I love you, baby boy. Tell him don't do it.
Hell, I love you.
Don't do it.
He said it. Matt's son said don't do it. What's your son's name?
Poopy pot.
Do it, you are just a poopy pants. That's what he said. If you do it, he said, don't do it. And if you do it, you are just a poopy pants.
The advice we are going to send out to the collective masses, don't do it. If you do, you're a poopy pants.
He talks like my 6-year-old.
Yeah.
Or 7-year-old now.
I stand by that. 100%.
That's incredible. The authenticity in his message was great.
Yes.
So I am speaking to one such person once upon a time, asking them for some advice, right? And this is a person that is far my senior in the game, phenomenally light years beyond in terms of brand establishment and success, on many different levels, and in many ways, shapes and forms is I think one of the largest icons in our industry.
Okay.
And this person asks me, Booth, if you knew then what you know now about this business. Now, mind you, this is me 6-7 years deep in the game at this point, right? Mm-hmm. If you know what you knew today, however, it was today, not when you started, would you launch your cigar brand? And I said, absolutely not. And this dude without pause said, neither would I.
Wow.
Because time and grade is everything. I started in this business and I put my little tent peg down in the sands of time during a period where there was this evolution, this romantic boutique era that I refer to as the golden era of the boutique cigar business.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
No one can ever take that away from our brand, and no one outside of the people that were active at that time can ever tout that. There's a certain amount of equity in that is irreplaceable and intangibly priceless, or at least so valuable, the values without quantification, right? So, to start now, man, you ever seen American Me?
Yes.
The Christmas tree dagger scene?
Yeah.
You would probably be begging for that after about 3 years of what's going on right now.
This is me, Chris, being the glass is half full person that I am. Here's the thing.
Full of what?
Yeah, the inherent optimist of you.
Oh, full of like E85 fuel at this point. And that's probably the bourbon talking. But part of me is hopeful that that taboo nature around tobacco will likely change in the future. I know that I think the problem with tobacco is the health implications is why it's so tricky and so difficult to really make yourself successful in this industry, because to me it's a relatively small industry. It's a what is it, like $1 to $2 billion industry?
I mean, it's small in comparison to other industries, for sure.
Yeah, and it's tricky to get into. It's tricky to get a footprint. There's so many restrictions on marketing and promotions and advertising, whatever it be. It is a difficult industry.
No, man, I got to be honest with you. Some of that shit's real simple. And quite frankly, the fact that there are restrictions on the way that you can market yourself are a strategic advantage as it applies to small business in this space. To be forbidden to advertise on Facebook and Google, I mean, how many countless thousands of dollars did you just save us every year, every company, by not letting us do that?
Investing
because
in those
now
AdWords and so on, right?
We've created a community of people that pass the wire.
God damn it,
Matt. So Matt, you're essentially saying that there's this kind of, I don't want to say necessarily underground, but there is, as far as the connected community is, it bypasses some of those normal streams of advertisement.
It was a
marketing.
trick statement. It's about
you.
It's like a prohibition.
You are a vehicle for this. You are the perfect example of a media outlet in our business. Our conversation, at least 5 different people will hear it. And then,
oh yeah, such an ass.
And then those 5 might consider sharing a detail from it with one, and before you know it, 17 people know about my brand. And then, on and on.
Yeah.
The dominoes continue.
Matt, I have we have at usually an average of 15 listeners a week. Okay, so give us a little credit.
Yes. Perfect. Even better. Even better. Bro, I'd show up if there was one, man. I just, look, I know that at least one person will hear this and one person will have an authentic dose of me and come to understand better what my brand's all about. And so that's invaluable for me. And that's why I said at the beginning, I tremendously appreciate you having me on.
Yeah. Likewise.
And we love, honestly, Matt, note, this is no exaggeration at all. I wouldn't bullshit you. This is one of my favorite conversations. Hands down.
Don't start a cigar brand. Don't do it.
Amen.
I can't help
Amen,
it.
sister.
I can't help it.
Chris wants it. I wasn't even asking for our own edification. I was asking for the collective audience and people that I respond to on a frequent basis.
It hit me
in
my heart.
Chris is literally like, you just ruined my dreams.
I'll take a couple of our bundles out of the warehouse and I'll put a little thing on them that says Chris.
Okay.
And then you'll have it. Will that suffice?
I mean, I'll still have to market that shit though.
You have a podcast, man. You say, yo, I have this hot fire. I got a limited drop, 50 cigars.
Yeah, I'm still going to have to fucking travel to B&M's when this shit lifts up.
Well, just travel with Matt. You'll be good.
All right.
Dude, on the backside of that.
I mean, you'll at least be entertained.
Yeah, for sure.
I don't know
dude, this is you've said it in the beginning as far as adding levity to this podcast and my day in general, and you've done just that, my friend. It's been incredible.
The thing about this industry is that I admire, but it also is difficult. Is this is like truly like a guerrilla marketing type industry. Like,
All
you got to
day.
find whatever ways, whatever means you fucking can to get fucking boots on the ground in people's faces to make it successful.
All day, man.
Yeah, it's wild.
But this is one of my strong suits, and that's why we've been able to survive what we've survived in this business and continue to be able to flourish.
Yeah.
Because that's my dojo.
So Matt, I have some more questions for you, so I hope you're ready for them.
Ask it.
What else are you interested in adding to the Room 101 brand?
The Dunhill of 1950 was what it was then now, which has always been the chief goal here with Room 101, right? It would contain some level of cannabis product.
Okay.
Now, I'm not saying, straight weed.
You're speaking my language. Continue.
I don't.
I said you're speaking my language. Continue.
Yeah, but some level of dankistry.
Okay.
Dankistry.
Dankistry.
Even if it was, and I don't want to maybe even divulge too much on
sure,
because quarantine has had Daddy's fingers very busy, but I think that it would contain some level of cannabis related collection. I think it's inherent.
Okay.
In terms of other things that I think would best round out a cohesive collection for us, ultimately would be eyewear.
Okay.
But the three main, for me, we're already operating in, and I believe that a foray into the cannabis space as a branded entity is simply a no-brainer. To have the trifecta of Vice products that are craft based, that are limited production, air quotes boutique,
right.
Smoke, drank, and dank. I mean, it's like it's the
I love that,
the trifecta. Yeah, no, but I mean, and that industry is very interesting for me on many levels. One is because I've sat with several growers, and all of them, like, the one thing that was this continuous theme with these guys was that they were just bleeding passion for their craft and talking about mouthfeel and flavor profile and all these different elements that, it's not just like, hey, we're all just going to fucking turn up and get stoned. It's like, yes, that's a byproduct of using that product. Right.
Right.
But he's talking about it like it's wine, man.
Right.
And it's unmistakable. If you are a peddler of such products, you very quickly come to recognize the stench of authenticity or the stench of none, right? Both.
Right. Of
so, these guys are, phenomenally devoted to their craft, but in many ways, I think, have no concept how to brand themselves. And that's a very, very intriguing proposition for a guy like me, who is a brander almost above most anything else.
Right. So Matt, are you currently in California? Where do you live?
It's Daddy's business. Oh, I'm sorry. This is a knee-jerk reaction. I apologize. So,
are you in fucking
in
Maine?
Oregon?
Okay.
Washington.
So friendly in nature. Okay. That's the only reason I asked. And that makes sense. It's weird that you say, because I don't know as much about that industry in terms of, people's passion for, that particular craft. I'm not as familiar with that as I am with cigars, obviously. But I had
it's almost it's equal.
Yeah, I was going to say, I'd have to imagine it would be, right? Like, it's not necessarily just like this money play. It's, hey, this is something that I've been intimately interested in or passionate about for a particular period of time. This is my life. This is where this is my lifeblood. This is my work. This is everything I'm going to put into this. It's interesting to see, as you've obviously articulated, the similarities that exist there. That's pretty cool.
Well, my man, I mean, same, right? In any industry that has a craft base, you have guys and gals again with that, man. You know what I mean? Folks.
Yep.
Folks that
2020, Matt. Come on.
And I know, man. I'm just trying to have a conversation. And so you have people enter that it is a money play, and most of them leave with their tail between their legs at some point, because guess what? Right. No matter what it is, it's hard work.
Right. Yeah, of course.
There is no easy dollar. You know what I'm saying? And
there isn't an easy dollar. You're right.
Huh?
That doesn't exist.
You must earn, man. And that's the thing. It's like, and there's always a come up. There's always right place, right time. But to be right place, right time took work to position yourself in that moment where the timeline and the opportunity meet each other, right? So there's always work. You're not just going to saunter in anywhere,
right?
And have this explosive. I mean, that doesn't exist.
And even sustainability.
Maybe I'm not that lucky.
Even sustainability isn't right place, right time. You may have that opportunity, but you've got to make something of it when it presents itself.
I've lived it, and I'll ask you this question: when it is the right place, right time, aren't you usually relatively unprepared for it, but you take the leap anyway?
It depends, man. I mean, they say that preparation is the intersection of or opportunities, the intersection of preparation and time.
Mm-hmm.
Right. But preparation doesn't necessarily mean like you're studying. My opportunity to enter the cigar business was not formed from 3 years of chasing after that opportunity.
Right.
It presented itself to me because of all this crazy heavy lifting that I had already performed.
Right.
And there was an opportunity, but then I also knew how to act on that opportunity.
Yes.
And embrace it. And then just so happened to fall in love with our business. And here we are. You can't get rid of me.
Yeah.
Like a shanker sword of this industry. You know what I find interesting about this conversation is there's been a lot of very heartfelt, very substantial information that I've given you.
Yeah.
And then I've also F-bombed and done shit and said things that, I find sometimes that the one thing that you're going to understand about me is my message will forever be blisteringly authentic, right? Good or bad, if you can take it or not. I feel that, at least in my own personal universe, to afford someone respect is to also afford them the naked truth, right?
Of course.
To not take 10 minutes basting it up with nonsense just so that they can swallow it more easily. Tragically, that's not the case for 90% of humankind, and
it's sufferable. Candidness is key.
Yeah.
I agree with you.
Yeah, I will forever never learn that lesson, right? So it's just kind of how I am. But then I'll say something like, I'm humping a hand grenade.
Dude, that's the funniest shit I've ever heard.
That just came out. Like, I've never used that.
I'm not kidding you, Matt. That in and of itself made my fucking Friday. I kid you not.
I thought it was literal.
Incredible.
I mean, think about it. It's provocative. So, but then someone hears that, and it's like if I said fuck in front of my mother when I was 17, like I could have said anything else, and she's not going to have anything to do with my message in total because I said F. So, tragically but true, I know that we probably lost a couple people along the way that just can't take my delivery. But for those that can take it and understand the content of my message, I hope that we reach some people.
You've certainly gained some, and I will tell you this, and I'm not going to speak for Chris necessarily, but in terms of this podcast that we've done, this is technically episode 148, so it's not like we're new to this. This has been ongoing. We actually, I think, just clipped our 3rd year anniversary here 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
So it's been, in terms of cigar podcasts or cigar related podcasts, we've been doing it for a little while, and our collective audience, we know we've lost some. We know that there's been some attrition, but we have some very loyal. We have some very loyal people who listen to our podcasts and identify with the things that we say. And those I would say would be in created alignment with some of the messaging that you brought forward to us. So I think this is only I doubt there's going to be far more those that are going to identify with what you're saying than those who are going to tune out and say, that's not for me. I'll put it that way.
Yeah, for sure.